There's three certainties in this world: death, taxes, and new Pokemon ROM hacks. But it seems like there's a new ROM hack out there every other day, and this past year was no different. From huge releases that everyone was talking about to games silently released online for people to find themselves. So today I'm going to be taking a look at all the ROM hacks that I played that came out this year and ranking them against each other to find out which ones I think are the best. All of these are complete games and they can all be found online for you to play. I'm only covering GBA releases though, and you'll see why eventually, but quick shout out to some great Gen 1 and Gen 2 releases this year like Celebrations, Brown Anniversary, and I've been hearing great things about Ambrosia, but that just came out like last week, so I haven't gotten a chance to play it yet. And like I said, this is only games that I've actually played, so I'm sure I'm missing some highlights that came out this year, so let me know in the comments if I'm missing one of your favorite games of 2024. I think a good starting point is a sequel to one of the games that I covered in my last ROM hack video. So first up we've got Water Blue 2. In the follow-up to Water Blue, you play as Blue going through Johto this time. He left all his Kanto Pokemon at home and starts out with a Wooper, which is actually a really fun and unique choice for a starter in my opinion. This is pretty much just a Gen 2 hack with a new protagonist, but also some other changes here and there. I did notice a pretty steep level gap a couple of times, especially with gym leaders compared to other trainers in the gym, but that could also just be left over from the base ROM, Liquid Crystal. And that's not too big of a deal, but you do have to grind a little bit here and there to get your team up to par. Speaking of grinding, you also get a skateboard instead of a bike, which is just undoubtedly more cool. There's also some cool quality stuff added like reusable TMs, tons of hidden items, and more Pokemon available. All in all, this is a pretty fun game, especially for a Gen 2 hack, and it's got some twists and turns to keep you interested throughout. Honestly, I think this was a great follow-up to Water Blue, and I'm gonna say A tier. Big Blue. This one felt kind of like a modern spiritual successor to Crystal Clear. It's an open world game where you're not really given like a set objective, besides the usual collect Pokemon, battle trainers, and gyms. But this does have a lot going for it. All Pokemon from Gens 1 through 3, 42 of which you can choose as your starter, along with choosing whichever town you want to start off in. There's no real barriers between towns either, so you can explore to your heart's content without having to do certain things to get to the next area. I spent the first couple of hours just running around and building my team, which I got to a team that I love within like an hour thanks to there being so many options out there. The encounter rate is awful though, it's like every single step sometimes. The trainers and gym leaders are all scaled to your power level though, so it truly doesn't matter which order you do the gyms in. It's got some new areas to explore and legendaries galore. This is a pretty cool game. The only real detractors for me personally is that there's no story to it, and I prefer my ROM hacks with storylines. But if you want just like a sandbox style Pokemon game, this is fantastic. But for me personally, I'm probably going to put this at B tier. Rolling Thunder. Because we here at Manham Productions are inclusive. But for real, I think it's really cool that this got made. It's basically just a remake of Yellow but with some changes, the main one being your characters in a wheelchair, along with the second rival, Leaf. And let me say, it is smooth. Both the animations and the actual controlling of the character just work really well. You get a Charmander as your starter instead of a Pikachu, but then you get to choose between 3 others at Viridian City, between a Mareep, a Sandshrew, and a Speel. I do think it's kind of weird that you start off with a Charmander, but then you can catch all 3 starters in the first route or 2 like I did. Trainers and NPCs all seem the same as they usually are, with a couple surprises here and there, but the encounters for wild Pokemon definitely differ a little. Also, if you worked on this game, please tell me, who the hell is this? He says that he's the daycare man, but so is this guy. Who are you? And since you can't ride a bike for, well, obvious reasons, you do get Power Wheels, and boy is it speedy. It's a pretty base game though, but there's nothing wrong with that. But I think since there weren't really a lot of changes against these other hacks, I'm gonna have to rank this at like C tier. But if you're looking for a game with minimal changes besides, some representation, this is pretty perfect. Team Rocket Emerald. A pretty fun spiritual successor to Fire Red Rocket Edition. Follows some similar beats, but it's different enough to where you're not going to be bored playing if you've already played the other one. There's no stealing mechanic, but it doesn't really detract from it too much. The storyline's pretty fun and engaging though, and I think it delves a bit more into actually being a Rocket member and trying to get you to see things from their point of view outside of LOL, I'm a bad guy. It is a translated game, so the dialogue isn't fully there sometimes, but not too badly where it gets annoying or anything. It's definitely a bit tougher and a bit more grindy, but it's a game that's worth your time and I really enjoyed playing it. There's tons of updates like reusable TMs, EV training, Mega Evolutions, and quite a bit more to make it more of like a modern experience. Right now the translation only goes up through Kanto, but the original included Johto and Hoenn, and I know once those are translated, I'm going to be picking this one back up again. I'm going to throw it on A tier. Beta Emerald Down and Dirty. If you followed the Pokemon news this year, you probably saw the big leak that happened a few months ago. That leak included a bunch of beta sprites and even cut Pokemon from Gen 3. And Down and Dirty here is a very simple ROM hack that basically just takes your standard Emerald game and replaces the sprites with the beta versions, as well as replacing a bunch of Pokemon with the ones that never made it into the game. The creator of the hack even said that this was basically just a way to play the game with all the leaked Pokemon. So if you have any interest in playing around with the leaked Pokemon or designs, this game's going to be perfect for you. There's a few other things added here and there, like some trade evolution workarounds and running indoors. Personally though, this wasn't really my cup of tea when it comes to ROM hacks. I think it's very cool that this was made, but having played Emerald so many times, I got pretty bored of this pretty quickly. I think the novelty of the new Pokemon just kind of wore off pretty fast for me. But hey, maybe this game is more exciting for some of you out there. I'm probably going to put it on D tier though. And I just want to say real quick, every single game on this list is impressive. Making a ROM hack is a ton of work and dedication, and any creators out there should be immensely proud of their work no matter where it ends on anybody's ranking. Just because I personally don't like it doesn't mean it's bad, just not for me personally. Pokemon Lavender. I believe the shortest, but also the strangest ROM hack on the list. This clocks in at about 20 to 30 minutes at the most. It takes place on a Halloween night in Lavender Town. Your character is out trick-or-treating when all of a sudden all the children disappear. You head up to the graveyard, do the easiest puzzle in any Pokemon game, climb down a well into a cavern where you have to unlock doors to find out where a demented Hypno has taken the children, and Jesus Christ, that's a picture. After you free the kids, you must escape through a maze before Hypno catches you, or you lose your lives running over these red squares. There's some eerie music playing, and what the fuck? I guess those. But once you manage to find the key and escape, the game ends with a happy ending. No Pokemon battles or anything really, just, sort of being chased by a Pokemon. And even though this is really short, I think it's pretty creative and pretty fun. If you're looking for a spooky game to kill half an hour with around Halloween, this is perfect. I've got to say though, as a Pokemon game, this just isn't it. It feels more like a short spooky level of like Earthbound or something. Like it's a good short RPG, but doesn't feel like a Pokemon game in the slightest to me. If this was just like a side mission in another ROM hack, I'd love it. But I don't think it really stands on its own, at least as a Pokemon hack. Even if they gave you like one Pokemon to battle a bunch of ghost types with, I think I would have preferred it and probably put it a little bit higher. It's well made, it's spooky, but it has very little to do with Pokemon. So just on that premises, I'm going to have to put this on D tier. By the way, if subscribers were Pokemon and I was Ash Ketchum, I'd be trying to catch them all, baby. So hit that little subscribe button to join my party, and I don't know, maybe I'll make you fight other subscribers or something. I don't really know how this comparison works. Lazy Green. We can all agree that Pokemon's a pretty easy game for the most part, right? Well, have you ever wanted it to be even easier? You can always load up a bunch of cheat codes, or you can take a run at Pokemon Lazy Green. And even though lazy is in the title, it definitely wasn't made lazily. It mostly refers to the fact that you can run through this game with basically no problems. Every Pokemon that you defeat, yours gains a level, sometimes even more depending on how low of a level they are. There are level caps though, which I think really helps this game out. You don't want to face Brock with like a level 45 Pokemon. I mean, where's the fun in that? On top of that, all of the items, including stones, TMs, and even specialty items, are just insanely cheap. There's tons of other quality of life updates, and if you don't want the game to be too easy, you can even turn on challenge mode. But my favorite part of this entire game is the way that they let you conduct a monotype run right from the get-go. Now, you don't have to play this way, but if you want to, you can choose which type of team you want to play with, and then those are the only Pokemon that you'll come across in the entire game. And HMs aren't a problem either, because you can get an HM slave in the Vermilion City for free. I've got to be honest though, going into this, I didn't expect to enjoy this one that much, but I really did. It's a nice, relaxing way to play through if you just want to play a Pokemon game without basically any stress at all. Honestly, it might have been one of the most enjoyable games on this whole list for me. Like, this is one of the most chill Pokemon games I've ever played. I'm going to say a solid A tier. Adventure Norman. This is another pretty short game. It's only one mission long. I think it took me about an hour or so to play through the whole thing. You play as Norman, a former champion. And I thought at first it was supposed to be your dad from Gen 3, but I'm not entirely sure since that's a normal type trainer, and this guy definitely isn't. Norman's off living in the woods in a cabin when the government comes to ask for his help with some terrorists. You gather up your team, which is already decided for you, all level 100, and then make your way to the bad guys. It's basically a simple dungeon crawl where you work your way up to the big boss. Pretty straightforward, not a lot of messing around. You don't even need to worry about healing because you get a reusable med kit that heals your team instantly. But this was a fun way to kill an hour. It's got basically no replay value, so no sort of like customization or anything, and there's maybe 15-20 battles at most. And the final 2 battles are definitely tougher. You know, I lost against the big bad the first time, but then basically wiped his team my next go around. Cool concept, but it's pretty short and pretty straight to the point. I'm gonna say B tier. Super cool spot. So before we talk about this ROM hack, we have to talk about one of the main inspirations here, Cool Spot. If you're unaware, Cool Spot was the mascot for the soda 7-Up. And in the early 90s, the makers of 7-Up decided to make a video game based entirely on this mascot and the world of 7-Up. It's a fun little platformer where you fight enemies with soda bubbles, and it's a true time capsule of that weird era of the 90s where every mascot got a video game from Chester Cheetah to the Pepsi Man. Now you might be thinking, why the hell would this be the basis for a Pokemon game? And I gotta tell you, I thought the exact same thing. When I first came across this game, I was like, this is gonna be the dumbest game ever. And I was pretty spot on with that. However, what I didn't expect was to love this game as much as I did. They went fully in on this hack, and it completely engulfs you in a world that is crisp, refreshing, and most importantly, cool. You start off like the usual Emerald game, only this time you're way cooler, rocking a pair of shades and the 7-Up logo on your headband, and you get your choice between a Magikarp, a Metapod, or the Cool Spot himself. And if you go with Cool Spot, you're going to get an Ice type who learns some special moves like Cool Shot, Cap Attack, or my favorite, Drink 7-Up. And then you're on your way to explore this cool new world. Everything about this game is either cool, you know, you get cool points instead of XP, cool centers instead of Pokemon centers, where your team can be restored to maximum coolness, or even cool marts where you can buy all of your soda needs. And if something isn't cool, it's 7-Up or soda related, from using different sodas to heal your team, to the 7-Up logo replacing the XP bars in battle, and even some Pokemon being changed to new lemon lime variants. The story stays pretty much the same, with the exception of stopping Team Pepsi and Team Coke, but there's tons of little changes here and there to just sort of fully immerse you into this soda-filled world. I don't want to spoil it too much though, because honestly, this game had me dying while I was playing it. I was cracking up more than I think I have at any ROM hack before, from the lines of the NPCs to surprise characters and even surprise Pokemon showing up. This game is just absolutely ridiculous, but in the best way. I had very low expectations going into this, and I think I enjoyed it the most out of every single game on the list. So it's not going in S tier, but I had a blast playing it, and I will be doing another run through soon. So I'm going to give this a very crisp and refreshing A tier. Magma. A pseudo-sequel to games like Red Rocket Edition or Team Rocket Emerald, only this time you play through Emerald as a Magma grunt instead of the usual protagonist. And I will say right off the bat though, that's basically where the similarities end. There's no new story really outside of some dialogue being changed here and there, and some of the lore of the teams being expanded on. But there are a couple quality of life changes that make the game feel more unique, you know, like Mega Evolutions, a Gen 6 style XP share, not having to equip HMs, along with a couple other things here and there. The AI is also improved, so it's a little bit more challenging than like vanilla Emerald, but it's nothing too crazy. I think this game is a good starting point for a Magma based game, but I really wish that it had like a story overhaul, because at times it feels like you're just playing Emerald with a Magma outfit on. So personally, I'm gonna say C tier for this one. Scorch Silver. Now I might be biased because I love Gen 2, but man, this one is a fun game. It's set in Johto and follows similar beats to the Gen 2 games. However, it's actually a sequel to them, set 20 years after the events of Gold, Silver, and Crystal. So while there's plenty of familiar locations and even familiar characters, there's an entirely new story along with new faces, new challenges, more Pokemon from other regions, and plenty of Easter eggs from the original games. You can really tell while playing this that the creator of the game also seems to have a bunch of love for Gen 2. This entire game just feels like a love letter to them, but in the best way. On top of that though, there's plenty of quality of life updates, from being able to change your Pokemon's ability, being able to battle Nurse Joys in the Poke Center for some free XP farming, tons of little stuff like even being able to shut off your Pokenav if you don't want to be interrupted every half hour by a bug catcher letting you know his Weedle's getting stronger. The graphics have been updated too, which gives it a bit of a feeling of like a mixture between Gen 3 and Heart Gold, Soul Silver. The only real downside in my eyes is that there's no Kanto region, but the Johto region is good enough on its own. This is a really fun game, fairly customizable for how difficult you want it to be, and quite a few surprises here and there that fans of the original are really going to appreciate. I think story-wise, this is the best game on this list, and I'm going to put it on S tier. Emerald Mini. releasing at the tail end of December and just squeaking onto the list at the last minute. Have you ever wanted to play through Emerald but hate all the running around and exploring? Have you ever wanted to be a giant? And this might be the game for you. This is one of the weirdest concepts for a hack, and I don't think anyone was necessarily asking for this, but I'm glad that we got it. This is your standard Emerald game, but everything besides the people and the Pokemon is basically shrunk down. So each town and route basically takes up one screen's worth of space. Everything's shrunken to the point where you can't even go inside most buildings, having to talk to NPCs and even challenging the gym leaders outside of their respective buildings. Speaking of gym leaders, I actually really like the workaround for the gyms, where it basically turns each gym into a gauntlet where all the trainers take turns coming out to battle. So while there aren't any puzzles to solve, the gym challenges can still be a bit of a challenge, having no breaks in between trainers and having to restart if you lose to any of them or to the gym leader. And the creator of the game found some really cool ways to work in the more unique gyms like Norman's with the doors that you choose. The only real downside that I found is since there's not as much walking space, when you're looking for Pokemon you just have to kind of run back and forth over and over, but that's not really a big deal at all. I think this game is really creative and actually a fun time, cutting through all the meticulous running around and making your way through any annoying areas. This game is like a speedrunner's wet dream when it comes to Pokemon, but even as a casual player, I really enjoyed it for the most part. Let's say A tier. And last up, probably the biggest release of the year, we have Emerald Seaglass. This is basically just a complete stylistic and quality of life overhaul of Emerald, but there's some really cool functions here, like right at the start of the game you can use the console in your room to enter tons of cheats which are really easy to find online. So right from the get-go you can basically run this game however you want, from having infinite candies or Master Balls to even getting different Pokemon at the start. Every Pokemon from Gens 1 through 3 are available in the game, including the legendaries, and some regional forms. So the encounters are a lot better than your standard Emerald. And you also get a Dex Nav if your goal is to catch them all. There's a few other additions which really add to this game, including some new mini games like the Scuba Safari, which is sort of like a mix between the Safari Zones and the bug catching contest. But the biggest change in this game is the art style. The entire game has been basically redone in this absolutely beautiful style that's reminiscent of the Game Boy Color games while still feeling modern somehow. So the whole game just feels nostalgic yet new at the same time. Honestly, this is probably like the coziest Pokemon game that I've played since Gen 2. Outside of those and a few other changes, it plays pretty much like your standard Emerald, and although I tend to like my ROM hacks with new stories for the most part, this is definitely an exception. Playing this was the most I think I've enjoyed playing just standard Emerald in years, and I don't know if I'll be able to go back to the regular version of Emerald after this. This is honestly just the better Pokemon Emerald, and I'm gonna put it on S tier. And that's my list for 2024. Like I said before, I know there's plenty of others that came out last year. These are just the ones I was able to get to. So if I'm missing your favorite, let me know in the comments so I can give it a play. I love Pokemon ROM hacks though, and I'm so excited to see what this next year has in store for us. I have a feeling that we're going to get some absolutely great games, and I can't wait to play them. Shout out to anybody that worked on these games. To the ROM hack players though, did your favorite make the list? Let me know down below, and thanks for watching.